When you're starting off any advertising type of thing that we're doing, whether it is an event or whether it is Google AdWords, you need to try to understand, are we doing this for lead generation or are we okay with this being branding, where it's going to be a little more amorphous on whether we're able to measure the direct results. I think that everybody probably knows this, but you really want to have a dedicated marketing line per campaign as much as you can. And then you got to train your intake staff.
Hey everyone, Bo Royal here, co-founder and CEO of Pareto Legal, a marketing agency that helps injury lawyers increase their profits with digital strategy, online advertising, and analytics. You're listening to the Pareto Legal Podcast, where we feature world-class attorneys, entrepreneurs, and legal experts. And today I'm joined by Randy Manning, the managing partner at Ramos Law. After starting his own practice, Randy joined Ramos Law in 2021, where he now oversees the firm's legal strategies and processes. Beyond the courtroom, Randy is a dedicated husband, father, and former baseball coach, and we are excited to hear his insights today on both legal practice and marketing strategies. Welcome, Randy.
Hey, how you doing, Bo?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate you making the time to do this today.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. So I'm going to dive right in with the first question, which is really just about you. What inspired you to become an attorney?
You know, I never really wanted to limit my career or myself. And I thought that getting a lot of education was a good way to make sure that when I was, older, that nobody would ever say, oh, you need this degree or you need that degree. So that was about as far as I thought about it when I decided to go to law school. And then at that point, you're pretty much a lawyer. I think after my first year of law school, I showed up at this personal injury lawyer's law firm and, borrowed suit jacket, which looked ridiculous, and said, look, can I do anything for you at all? And he hired me, and I stayed there all the way through law school and really just enjoyed that practice, really enjoyed the area, really enjoyed kind of helping people. And the rest is kind of history.
And so now you're managing partner for a large law firm. And can you talk to me about how are you spending your day-to-day these days? What are your primary areas of focus at the firm?
It depends and it changes. I mean, what I try to do is figure out what I can do to help our law firm the most. We're big enough at this point where a lot of that involves kind of working through management with other attorneys who are now managing, smaller teams. So if I think that I can add value to a trial, I'll go and jump in on a trial. If I feel like I can add value to the intake team, I'll do that. I really just try to focus on serving our employees as much as I can and trying to figure out where I can serve the most.
In regards to marketing and the marketing strategies for the firm, do you have a hand in that? Are you involved with strategic decision making around the firm's marketing?
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, I'm more, when I started my own firm, we spent a couple of bucks here and there on advertising, but none of it worked. And so I was really involved in kind of building that firm. And probably for the last 5 years, we didn't spend $1 to get a case. As it relates to this firm, I don't know as much about, how are we going to market on this platform or this platform. There are a lot of grassroots, more kind of strategies that I do help with quite a bit. And then overall direction, should we, advertise for this case or that case? And then obviously signing up the cases, making sure that the people are taken care of. I deal a lot in that area as well.
For Ramos Law, I think one interesting thing about how you guys are positioned is your founding partner is also a doctor. And it seems like that is a key part of your marketing strategy and positioning, in that you like broadcasting that to your target audience, that you have both that in-house legal and medical expertise. Is that kind of a fair synopsis of your positioning?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a huge differentiator. I think, Dr. Ramos is a doctor and an attorney and accomplished in both areas. And I think that helps. I also think that it helps a lot that he's a good person and he seems very genuine. And so I think that there's a combo of all of those things that go together that really differentiate us. We're not, jokesters or people or attorneys who take ourselves too seriously. I see a lot of that. And when it's like, well, we're really, really qualified to do the medical side of your case, we're really qualified to do the legal side of your case, and we're not, an uncomfortable ad. We're a welcoming ad and somebody who I think the market feels like has the competency and the ability and also the desire to help them.
Talk to me about like your referral relationships. Like, how are you leveraging relationships with other professionals or past clients to generate referrals? And then what advice would you give to other personal injury lawyers, law firms looking to build a solid referral network?
That's huge, right? I mean, I think that when you get into what we do, and we do have a brand in Colorado and Arizona, we do have some of those advantages, but there's still a lot of meat left on that bone if you're ignoring, how you treat people in your industry. And what I would say, if you're a young attorney, let's say, or just starting out, is you got to look at 10 years down the road and who are you building relationships with? Are you trying to go to the person who's already there and already can help you? Or are you kind of forecasting, who am I going to spend my time with who in the next 5 or 10 years is going to be there? And then getting past the, networking, the stuffy stuff, and have fun, meet people, help them, become valuable to them, become a trusted friend and a trusted resource. And then when you guys start growing together, then all of these connections start coming together. And so you can really grow with a lot of people that way. I think that there's a ton of different industry partners that we work with. And, you've got to be careful with the ethical rules and all that and how you approach those things. So what we really try to focus on is just being kind of servants to them, serving them as much as we can. What can we help you with? What can we do for you? Hey, should we trade cases back and forth? There's sometimes you meet people and it's like, we can't really do that right now. We're not getting cases, but we really want to work with you. Well, how else can you establish a relationship with them and make it about the relationship and not make it about your end business goal? And so if you kind of focus on those right things, I think that you end up getting what you want down the road with time, and you've developed those deep trusting relationships, which are critical.
That was a great answer. I think a lot of people don't realize how long that can take to really build those relationships. To your point, you shouldn't go into it with an end goal in mind of like, hey, I'm going to go to this event and I'm going to get 10 referral partners and they're going to send me all these cases. If you're going into that situation and you're not willing to lead with value and actually build a true relationship, it's going to fall flat, right? Nothing's going to happen. So I totally agree with you there. I want to go back to what you said earlier about having some involvement with grassroots marketing. Is your firm involved with like community outreach and involvement in the community? And if so, how does that contribute to your marketing strategy?
Same thing there is we absolutely do a ton of events. We do events from Pueblo, which is on the southern end of Colorado, all the way up to Fort Collins. And we try to figure out, what groups can we involve ourselves with that, you don't want to look at it again like the end game is that we're going to get our phones ringing. We kind of look at it more like, well, who needs help? You know what I mean? How can we serve this community, and is it a righteous cause? We have the fortunate ability to do that where we don't necessarily need to say, are we going to get cases from this? So there's that in. We do some amazing things in Grand Junction. I think the local baseball teams, their bleachers had broken. You know what I mean? And we were able to come in and build them new bleachers. And that's that's awesome. You know what I mean? I don't know if we got a case from it or if it worked out, but we are big enough to do that. I think when I was a smaller attorney and just trying to figure out things, I think one thing I actually probably overlooked was niche groups. You know, like what do you like to do? And for me, my baseball coaching, I didn't look at that like this is marketing, but I grew so many relationships. We've got 15 kids, let's say, per team. And then, you know, I'm coaching in the fall and I get another 10 kids and you start building real relationships there. And then all these connections kind of start getting made. There's tons of car groups. There's tons of concert music festivals, like all of those things is like, if you're starting to find a niche area to develop those community relationships is a very, very powerful way to go. And it is the long game. It's not, hey, we went to this one event and we got 6 calls the next week. It's, in a year, this person that I met at a chili festival, had X, Y, and Z happen, and now they need your help.
I would compare it to like working out. You're not going to go to the gym once and, walk away with a 6-pack, right? You got to just put in the work every single day. You got to eat clean. And there's these slow kind of compounding results that you get over time. And I would compare, relationship building, community-based marketing, similar. Like I would call it a very similar trajectory. It's like slow and smooth, but it can really compound well for you over time. For the events that you mentioned, are those more like sponsoring events, or are you hosting a specific event?
So we host some events in our office. So we host like a marketing kind of group. And we do that. I think that's a weekly marketing group, like a BMI group or a leads group or something. And I don't even know if we're in it, but we try to be that resource. We have hosted, I believe, the North Glen Chamber of Commerce in our office. They need a big space. We have a big space, so we've let them do some of those. Then we sponsor all sorts of things. We sponsor golf tournaments, charitable events, a lot of them. We're a big sponsor of the CTLA, the Colorado Trial Lawyers Association. We're trying to make some inroads into Arizona and do some sponsorship type of stuff out there. But yeah, all of those. So both we host and we'll go and just sponsor some events, and a whole lot of them, more than I even know about.
Awesome. And then who would you say your like ideal client is? I know that you're in your multi-state practice, but like in terms of demographic, who are you targeting with your marketing these days?
That's one of the challenges with personal injury is there isn't a target demographic necessarily. You're trying to get people on your team who trust you and like your brand before they're in a car crash, and you don't know when that person's going to be in a car crash. And there's not necessarily a demographic that says 25 to 35-year-old males are going to get in more car crashes. I mean, there's probably some of that, but we're really, in Colorado specifically, we're really looking at more branding, we're here to help when something bad does happen to you. Whereas in some other markets where maybe we're not as big, you are focused maybe a little more on the lead generation aspect of the marketing.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And you've already said something along these lines on the podcast so far, but for our listeners, if you're a smaller firm, you should be focusing more on like direct response, immediate ROI type of tactics because you're operating with limited budget. You really need to make sure that every dollar you spend is sticking to your bottom line and you're getting cases from it. But as you mature in your life cycle as a firm and, the firm grows, the budget grows, things of that nature, you're going to have to start allocating budget towards other tactics. And a lot of those tactics are not direct response. Everything we just talked about in terms of grassroots marketing, relationship building, sponsorships, there is no direct ROI on those tactics. But, the part of the reason you make them is to generate more awareness, build more of a brand over the long term so that, to your point, Randy, people are thinking about your firm before they even get in a car accident. And when they do, they don't go to Google search. They've already seen your ads. They've seen you in a pamphlet, or they've seen you on a jersey or something like that, multiple times over. They notice to call you right away. So that's really why you make those investments in branding. The reason I asked about the demographic is because in our experience, different audiences are going to be marketed to through different mediums, right? So let's talk about like Google search, for example. In our experience, the people that are turning to Google to find an attorney are typically going to be lower income. I think of it as like more affluent audiences. Their brother might be an attorney, their friends might be an attorney, right? So they're going to go more through word of mouth, whereas less affluent audiences are going to be turning to things like Google or Reddit. That's really going to be their source of truth for making their decision, right? So that's why I asked the question. And I wanted to know, like, in terms of digital, are you aware of like what your primary drivers are for case volume?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, we're going to hit every demographic, if that makes sense. And so I agree with you. You have to really consider your demographic and what your firm's strategy is. So let's take Arizona as a good example, right? Scottsdale and Phoenix, they're really close, but they're kind of worlds apart. And the concept is that, well, the Scottsdale folks have a little bit more affluence, a little bit more of that, but they're not as likely to bring a car crash claim if they're in a car crash. They're more likely to go to the doctor, and get it taken care of quickly and not even either settle with the insurance company directly. But, on the other hand, you might have higher policy limits there, and maybe the cases are a little more severe. So I could see a firm going in and trying to understand what types of cases they're looking. Are you looking to lead generate and create volume, or are you looking to hunt the big fishes? And it probably makes sense. Whereas we are in a good position to try intentionally to market to all demographics, right? So we're going to go on Facebook, which is a different argument or different audience than Instagram or TikTok. We're going to go and try to hit all those different demographics, including Google AdWords. But if you don't have that level of budget, then you need to think about, what are you trying to accomplish as a firm? Are you trying to get one case and work on it for a year and get $1 million? Or are you trying to get 40 cases that are worth $50,000, are going to more likely to sell for that amount?
I just wanted to ask about, for your firm specifically, how are you all measuring the effectiveness of all these different things you have going? Obviously, it's really hard for some things, like you just simply can't measure. Something like we were just talking about a baseball team sponsorship. But for, some of the other marketing tactics you're running, how are you measuring that? How often are you looking at that data to make, decisions on things like budget allocation or future campaigns?
Yeah. So when you're starting off any advertising type of thing that we're doing, whether it is an event or whether it is Google AdWords, you need to try to understand, are we doing this for lead generation, or are we okay with this being branding, where it's going to be a little more amorphous on whether we're able to measure the direct results? Some obvious ways to do it is you want to, I think that everybody probably knows this, but you really want to have a dedicated marketing line per campaign as much as you can. And then you got to train your intake staff, right? You cannot let that data go to waste. And if they're not trained on how important it is to figure out where that call came from, you're not going to have any clue what your ads are doing.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. I talk about that all the time. You cannot expect your advertising investments, all your marketing initiatives to take off if you do not have your intake buttoned up. That's inclusive of the personnel, the process, the technology, and then also, doing good enough job to QA all of that to make sure that it's functioning the way it's, intended to function. So, no, that is a great response. I want to talk a little bit about, let's actually talk about your marketing team. So does your firm have an in-house marketing team? Do you outsource a lot of your marketing? What does that look like at your practice?
So it's a mix at this point. We have some in-house, we have some kind of outside consultant type stuff, which I think is probably, where it will go in the future. But yeah, we have social media is a different ballgame. You have to be more flexible. You have to be able to generally you have to be able to create your own content, and it's got to look good. It's got to be fitting with what message you're trying to put out there. So we do have internal social media, and then we obviously have internal marketers in terms of the community events and that type of thing.
Yeah, that seems to be the common model for especially firms of your size, to have in-house marketing managers that are interfacing with, fractional channel specialists, agencies, so on and so forth. So yeah, no, that's great. Can you talk to me a little bit about the messaging techniques that you have found most successful in converting leads from initial consultations? Is there something that you've added to your intake or to your messaging that's really helped convert a greater proportion of leads? Or is that something that you're just continuously trying to figure out? Can you talk a little bit about that?
If your people are just answering the phone and here's another call and I've got to check these boxes and fill this sheet out, I don't like that model. And so we really want to introduce some themes to our team. We're glad that you called us. We are happy that you decided to trust our law firm and even give us a shot at representing you. We can help you. You know what I mean? I think that's huge. I think that when you look at the big picture, and I've done so many intakes. When I was doing my own firm, I did the intakes because I needed to sign the case up. My conversion rate had to be 100%, right? Because I was only going to get 30 calls a month or 10 calls a month or whatever it was. Now, obviously, you don't necessarily hit those numbers, but having those broad strokes of this person has called for a solution to their problem. They don't want to call 7 people. They don't want to leave a message. They don't want to keep their problem in their pocket. They want to give it to you. And so when you can kind of understand that broad picture, that you have to be someone who's personable enough and knowledgeable enough to say, thank you so much for calling us. This is a great opportunity for our firm, even though we're big. And here's how we're going to be able to help you. And you have to carry that through on rejects, because what you're going to have a lot, especially once you hit volume, is if you don't do a good job of handling a reject, you're going to get a bad review from that reject. So carrying that message through, having a way to help every single person, even if it's just pointing them in the right direction, is absolutely huge. From, the specific personal injury case, if you're doing the intakes, you got to find the sensitivity, right? The person's anxious, they have a problem. Some people is that they're worried about their property damage. Some people is they're worried about who's going to give them medical treatment. Some people is worried about not being able to go to work the next day. So you have to listen and figure out where their sensitivity is. Some of it's price, some of it's, am I going to get screwed over by this attorney that I don't really know or trust? And you have to talk to that specific sensitivity of that person, which, there's no training model for that necessarily. But you constantly work with your intake team. You're never going to get them 100%. You constantly do evaluations of their calls. You do evaluations of how they sound. I always tell our intake, I'm like, when you get a call, okay, and I'll tell clients this in a deposition, you can't be this, right? If I answer this call and it's, hey, I'm glad you called, you've got to be like, okay, I've got a call. I'm answering it. I'm leaning forward, which is showing engagement. And I'm going to pretend like you're sitting right in front of me and I'm talking to you. And that comes through on the phone. So those little details, you just train and train and train. And it's one of those things you're never going to perfect, but you just always try to get better.
So, Randy, can you talk about what role your online content, such as blogs or case studies, plays in educating your potential clients about personal injury?
Content is going so quickly right now in terms of how quick you deploy content, how quick you can get it on your website. I mean, that's one area that I think AI has really started to revolutionize. Um, you know, I think for personal injury, you there's some ways that you can really become the expert even on a specific crash. But I think that there's a lot of personal injury type cases where you are doing more educational marketing, right? If I'm marketing for a car crash case, I need that person to want to call us after they're in a car crash. If I'm doing a consumer protection case or um, some of these class action type of cases, you're doing more educational marketing, which is informing somebody that you have a case. And so how you're going to do that content is going to be completely different than how you would do content to try to get a car crash case. And I think educational campaigns can be extremely valuable because the people are there. If you can get your educational message out to them to explain to them that they have a case already. Um, so that's where I see the content that's created to educate your audience being pretty powerful.
I completely agree. And it's a common thing that we see a lot of firms not doing enough of is building more and more of that educational content, because there are a lot of instances where someone does suffer an injury or is involved in an accident and they're not even thinking about an attorney yet. They just are thinking, what do I do next? What has happened here? What are my next steps? So thinking about that in terms of a Google search, like someone gets in a car accident and they Google what to do after a car accident. If you could be the first result on that search, drop a cookie on their browser and then hit them with an ad a day, a week, a month later, probably sooner than that. Let's say a day or a week later. That's really powerful. That's a very powerful tactic, and you're not going to have to compete with the 50 other attorneys once someone types in car accident attorney down the line. If you can get in front of them before they even are what we call solution aware, that's a very, very powerful tactic. So in terms of your firm's content, what does that look like? Are you all doing a lot of video? Are you doing a lot of, is there like a specific medium that you're focusing on with content? Is it primarily blog? Is it YouTube? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we probably do all of them. I mean, we're trying to hit blogs, we're trying to hit written material. We're trying to hit some of that in the SEO stuff, and then you're also doing videos. I mean, obviously on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, even the videos are generally going to be the most effective from what we have found. But it helps when you have it backed up on your website, or if you're writing guest articles, if you're doing some things where you can do some backlinking and that kind of thing. That's all beneficial.
I want to shift gears away from marketing and ask about your role now as a managing partner. Looking ahead over the next couple of years, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're going to try to tackle?
Scale is a major issue. And, even at a smaller scale, if you have a marketing group that works or a marketing plan that works, but you don't have the intake team to sign up those cases, that's a major problem. And we've gotten into some lower conversion type of cases, which means we're going to get way more calls than we're going to sign up those cases. Car crashes are generally, I mean, if you're doing bad, you're signing up 25% of your car crash leads. But when you start looking into different areas of the law, you're looking at signing up 2 or 3% of those calls. And so when you start scaling that out, How do you answer the calls, get them to the right place, get them evaluated correctly, so that you're not shaving points off of your conversion ratio, essentially. So that's a huge challenge for our firm, is to scale out that intake call volume, and have those effectively managed and find those solutions, because we're really getting really good at marketing, but the better you get at marketing, the more that call answering gets to be a challenge. Yeah. I mean, other than that, it's really once you hit the scale, I mean, the biggest challenge is your role is changing. We've gone from, I think, 60 or 70 employees when I started to somewhere in the neighborhood of 220 right now. And so when you look at the job demands, when you have 60 or 70 employees to 240, then your job description's changed, and nobody's telling you your job description's changed. So you have to figure out, probably every 6 months, what am I doing now? What's the next step? And realistically, getting everybody organized into, effective groups, keeping the good people you have together, keeping everybody kind of happy, keeping a positive work environment. Those are all tremendous challenges. But once you hit that many employees, that's really, if you can do that, you're doing good. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, no, I talked to a lot of firms, and it seems like the marketing side of it is the easier thing to scale. The harder side is the personnel, the operation side. That doesn't scale as quickly, right? It's very easy to hit a budget on a Google campaign or a TV campaign and go from 100,000 to 200,000. But in terms of jumping from, like you just said, 100 something employees to now 200 plus, that's a huge increase. And it probably required like a paradigm shift in terms of roles and expectations and KPIs, and you needed to hire new roles that didn't exist 5 years ago. So yeah, no, that is seemingly the resounding obstacle that firms of your size are dealing with. Randy, I really want to thank you for being on the podcast today. How can our listeners learn more about Ramos Law?
You go to our website. We have Instagram, Facebook. We have our own podcast. It's called Difference Makers, that Dr. Hoven, our chief operating officer, does. You could look in the news. We've been in the news a decent amount. So a lot of ways to find Ramos Law if you're interested, and give me a call if there's something else that, you have questions about. I'm always happy to talk.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Randy, and thanks everyone for tuning into this episode of the Pareto Legal Podcast. We'll see you next time for another episode.